Monday, of course. It is definitely September the 8th here in Durham, North Carolina. And of course, we're going to see what's happening in the world of news. I know that yesterday we were joking about the weather and the fact that one of our panelists who will be joining us very shortly has a storm named after him. And apparently, it's a monster storm because Hurricane Lee, and of course, that's my last name, but it's also Lee Newton Rhodes' first name, is now a monster category 4 storm as it is strengthening in the Atlantic area, and it is definitely skyrocketing in intensity. So that is definitely something that we are seeing in the news, and we're also seeing a major individual that is withholding some internet and satellite information as well. And we're going to see how that's going to impact the war in Ukraine, because apparently Elon Musk has acknowledged withholding satellite services to thwart the Ukrainian attack. So that is something that is out there in the world. And then apparently Elon Musk has said there will be no more war, not via his satellite. And apparently that is something that he was putting out there as well. So I'm sure that our panelists, including maybe Shaquille and others, will have things to say about that as well. And apparently, Trump is expected to get a major endorsement while headlining a rally in South Dakota. So that is something that is going on in the world as well. So there's definitely a lot of things that are happening. And I know that when we get Nick on here, he'll have some things to say about some of the things that aren't being discussed in the world as well. And King Charles III is marking 1 year since Queen Elizabeth II's death. I did not realize it had been that long in all in that space, but definitely on that anniversary, they put out a photo, it looks like, and all along those lines. And I'm sure they'll have some other celebrations as well. And Hong Kong, speaking of weather, is drenched in the heaviest rain in 140 years. I know that they say that this has been one of the hottest summers on record in the world. And apparently, there in Hong Kong, they're having one of their heaviest rainstorms and all along those lines. So, definitely, there are things going on in that way. And speaking of the climate, apparently, that is what caused a delay in the tennis match on last night, because I was watching that match actually, and I know that Coco Gauff won and will be facing the young lady from Belarus and all in that space. But definitely there was a delay, and a long delay, because apparently somebody, one of the climate protesters, decided to glue themselves to the chairs there and all along those lines. So they finally found a way to remove that individual, and the match went on. And then, like I said, Coco Gauff has made it to the final. So we'll see how that result goes. And of course, the men are playing later on this evening to determine their final spots as well. But I think that Coco even said that she had a premonition that something like that would happen, because it had already happened at Wimbledon French Open and a couple of other places as well. So apparently she psychs herself up regularly, and that was something that she had envisioned might happen on this particular day, or that particular day, and all along those lines. And apparently there is a rescue mission going on with an American caver, Mark Dickey, who is trapped 3,400 feet inside a Turkish cave. So they're now trying to rescue that man, who apparently is also fallen ill while exploring that area and while exploring those deep caves and all in that space. So that is something that we are seeing as well. And apparently the G20 summit is going on, and I'm sure that our folks will have things to say that about that as well, because apparently U.S. President Biden has left for India to attend the G20 summit, and of course he'll be holding talks with the Prime Minister Modi as well. So this is definitely something that'll be going on, and we'll be seeing how things will happen in that particular conference that is taking place as well. So that is something that is going on. And for those of you that are history buffs, apparently 4 Roman swords, exceptionally preserved after 1900 years, have been discovered in a Dead Sea cave. So that is something that I'm seeing for those folks that are history buffs and all along those lines. And over in Africa, in Mali, at least 49 civilians have been reported dead in an attack on a riverboat and all along those lines. Actually, I'm seeing different numbers. One of the numbers was saying that it could be as many as 60 and all along that kind of space. But definitely there are some attacks going on in that way. And if you're wondering what they're spending money on in the White House, apparently the White House is finishing $50 million renovation of the Situation Room. So that is something that is going on. They're spending a lot of money with cutting edge tech, some mahogany, and a lot of other things in that space. So definitely it'll be interesting to see what our panelists have to see about this money that is being spent to renovate a room in that area and all along those lines. And the Mexico president is backing the ruling party candidate after the selection process had taken part in that part of the world as well. So it does look like there in Mexico that there may be having a woman leader very shortly, and we'll see what folks have to say about that as well. And as I said, nearly all of the world's population has been exposed to global warming over the June and September, according to some studies that have been done in that space as well. And over in France, the French court is supporting the government's ban on the Muslim abaya dress in their particular schools and all along those lines. And Venezuela's Maduro is to visit China to re-engage amid the China-West tensions and all in that way. So Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro will be visiting China. So that is going on, as well as apparently Xi has skipped the G20 and is welcoming the debt burden leaders in China as well. So I don't think it's just the Venezuelan president. Apparently he's inviting some other people to come as well. And I guess he'll be trying to talk to them about what he can do for their various governments and all along those lines. And it looks like the Southeast Asians are wary of new conflicts as big powers join the ASEAN summit. So definitely that is something that we are seeing. And apparently the Indonesia leaders are warning of protracted conflicts and all in that way. So that's just some of the things that we are seeing. Apparently 23 billion has been pledged at the Africa Climate Summit. But definitely it'll be interesting to see what happens in that, because African leaders are backing global carbon taxes to pay for green energy in those poorer nations, or in some of those poorer nations that exist in that area and all along that kind of way. So definitely a lot of things are happening in that way. Apparently, I mentioned some of the historical finds, and apparently a Norwegian man has found a 1,500-year-old gold necklace with his metal detector. So I guess he was out there doing the whole metal detection thing, and he stumbled across this find as well. So folks are out there doing that treasure hunt and finding some very interesting treasures as well. So whether they are on scientific missions or whether they're just doing that old sweep the house or sweep the beach or whatever they may be sweeping in order to look for various things. I know that I used to dream of getting a metal detector and trying to find some things as well. And as far as the escaped convict, Danielle Cavalcanti has been spotted in Pennsylvania town as search enters its 9th day. So they are still trying to find this escaped killer, and he's been out there for 9 days and all along those lines. So definitely that is something that we are seeing. The Florida Supreme Court is to hear an abortion case that could drastically limit access and all in that space. So we do know that after the Dobbs decision, there's been a lot of conversations about where the individual states and how they are handling it. So that is what is going on in Florida and all along those lines. So like I said, there's a couple of other news stories, but I'm going to bring in my panelists as well and see what other news that they have heard about. By the way, presidential hopeful Chris Christie has made his case for 2024. So he has definitely said that Trump is sick to his stomach after the Mar-a-Lago worker strike deal with the prosecutors. So definitely he has hit back at Trump, because I know Trump has definitely made attacks on him and all along those lines. And apparently there in New York City, Eric Adams has made some scathing remarks on the whole thing around migrants and the influx of migrants. He says the city doesn't have the resource to handle that influx and all along those lines. He is saying that that is something that is going on in his particular part of the world. And of course, there are folks that are saying that he needs to do something to fix that and all along those lines. And Trump signals that he may be seeking to move the Georgia election case to the federal court. So he is saying that that is something that he is thinking about as well. So, like I said, we're going to bring in some folks with different story ideas and different things that they've got going on and all along those lines. So the first person I'm going to bring in is none other than Lee Newton Rhodes, because apparently we've got a storm named after us. It's your first name.
Good morning, Mark.
So
I didn't understand this. First of all, it does not bother me at all. I'm sure it doesn't bother you. Remember when there was a storm they were named after this Chinese leader because alphabetically his was next, and they skipped over him. They didn't want to offend him. I mean, how shallow can a person be?
Yeah, I guess they didn't want to offend him. I've seen the storm's named after you is named after you. I know that I've had some friends that were named after some very serious storms that did some serious damage. I don't know that my friend who unfortunately has passed away that was named Fran was all that ecstatic about having that storm named after him, or a couple of other folks that I've known that have had.
Could you imagine if your name was Katrina?
Yeah, exactly.
It is what it is. Big deal.
Yeah,
get over it. First of all, before we go on, I just want to say thank you. I don't know why anyone listens to any other newscast. The news that you squeeze into a few minutes at the beginning of this show, and it's just so comprehensive, is amazing. Thank you.
I try to get as much as I can and try to see things that I think might be of interest to around the world, and definitely look at both the United States and here. And definitely there are things that I have personal interest in. I'm a somewhat of a sports fan. I didn't mention the fact that the defending Super Bowl champs actually lost by a point to the Detroit Lions. So that was something else that I was watching on TV yesterday. So that was a not great start for them. And like I said, I was watching the tennis match and was, like many fans, frustrated because apparently there was some climate change activists that were causing disruption to the game. It was way up in the upper seats, but they were definitely causing that disruption. So even though Coco was up at the time of the disruption and did go on to win, I was sitting there going like, what's going on up there? And then that's when they revealed that it was some climate change activists that had literally glued themselves, or at least one of them had, to those seats and everything. So Nick, glad that you're here. I've got Shaquille as well, so we'll bring Shaquille on. I'm trying to figure out how do you even get glue into the newsstand, and how do you put the glue onto yourself to glue yourself to something? Because apparently this happened as they were getting him off. So I'm still trying to figure out the logistics of this and everything. So if somebody can explain to me how in a massive crowd, because that's a massive crowd at the U.S. Open. It's definitely been one of those things that I have had on my wish list, along with the World Cup, to attend at some point or another. But how do you manage to glue yourself to a chair and everything? Any ideas, Nick and Shaquille, as to how you even pull that off?
How do you do it? I mean, the glue, what do you want? Solidifies, whatever the word is, very quickly. Super glue.
Okay.
So why would you want to do that?
That's another question. I don't get it.
I have a lot of better things to do than glue myself to any bloody chair.
Nick, that's like people in the winter when the temperature drops to zero. They'll show a video of them licking at a telephone pole or something like that. A metal pole with a tongue sticking to it. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I do have some news for you, Mark. So I just want to bring this up because none of the media ever brings it up. Yeah. In case people don't know, in the United States, Medicare goes broke this decade. Social Security goes broke next decade. And of course, they never do want to bring that up. Student debt has 1.7 trillion. That's not billion. That's trillion in debt right now. So the great United States of America has sent all the young people into the debt lines. And then when you add on top of it, the United States is 31 trillion in debt. These are all not good numbers. And then the latest.
But speaking of those numbers, I just mentioned earlier, and I'd love to hear.
Are under financial stress. Now,
and speaking of those numbers, and I'd love to hear Shaquille's thoughts about this as well, because I did mention, and I'll mention another one that was very expensive as well. But apparently, they're spending a lot of money, and I do mean a heap of money. It's like in the millions and everything along those lines to redesign the Situation Room. Now, I get you want new technology and that you want some maybe mahogany furniture and all along those lines, but what are our thoughts around this? Because apparently they have spent a whole heap of money to redesign and remodel the Situation Room there in Washington, D.C. at the White House and everything. So, I know we're getting a lot of global situations, and I know that their Situation Room is being used regularly, but what are we thinking about the fact that they wanted to remodel it? And I'm imagining, I don't know this for a fact, but correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, you would probably know better than I would. Isn't a lot of this money coming at the taxpayers' expense and everything? So I'm imagining it's
A
not
lot versus all.
Well, all of it's coming at taxpayers' expense. See what happens is you actually have a government that's been out of control and still is, and they don't address the financial realities. Here are the financial realities. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Here's another financial reality. 1% of Americans, 1%, have 40 to 50% of all the assets in the United States. Another financial reality. 40% of Americans have 1% of the assets in the United States.
Perfectly fair.
We have a very lopsided country economically, and people still buy Taylor Swift.
So let's. I'm going to come back to a couple of things. Firstly,
You're in Australia. What do you know?
These so-called climate activists.
Yes.
Are they using petroleum-based glues, or are they using natural products here to glue themselves to the seats? My personal opinion is, I don't know why they're bothering to unglue these people. Leave them there, right? If they, in the middle of a tennis court, just play tennis around them, they get a couple of tennis balls in the head, that's their problem. They've glued themselves there. They glue themselves to the freeway, leave them there. Let the cars just drive around them, right? They put themselves in that position. They can suck it up. Because just stop oil. We're going to do exactly what they asked. We don't have any way of getting them off. There's no thinner or glue remover that's not based on oil products. So sorry, guys, you're stuck. You went and glued yourself to an art, to an art wall or something like that. You're gonna have to live there. Call your family, see if they'll come in and feed you, because we ain't gonna do it. That's one solution, and I quite like it. As for the Situation Room, well,
Yes.
Given that you couldn't even keep out cocaine from the corridor going into the Situation Room, maybe it is due for an update. Nick, I have a question for your economic genius to answer for me. If you are bringing in all of these poor people into the country, are you expecting them on day one to actually own a whole heap of assets? Are you expecting a whole heap of 18-year-olds that are just graduating out of high school to own a whole heap of the assets? Or is there going to be some sort of disparity between the people at the bottom and the people at the top? Is it true or not true that in the United States, more people move out of the bottom percentile into higher percentiles in their lives than any other country on earth? Is that true or not true? It is true. And I don't think there's any...
No, I mean, the thing is, they did studies on the Gini coefficient. The United States is really, really low right now. It used to be true. So if Shaquille, you came here in the 50s and the 60s, when, of course, the income tax was 90% over $1 million, which you hate. But in the 50s and 60s, the Gini coefficient and the mobility,
it's also...
people move from class to class.
You say I hate it. Who in their right mind?
The Gini coefficient.
Who in their right mind is going to say, "Wow, I'm getting 90% of my money stolen from me by government. Brilliant! Oh, sign me up for that." But more importantly, let me ask you this:
You're now not allowing rape and pillage of the population.
Why is it that you're happy for 90% of income to be taxed? So that's people that are new money, people that are just earning the money for the first time. Their money is going to be taxed. But the old money, the old elite money, right, that's been accumulated by wealthy families for centuries, that money doesn't get taxed because it's already in assets. That seems like a fair and reasonable solution.
Asset-based taxes are also good, Shaquille. They had an estate tax, which was an asset-based tax, and we may have to bring that back again. But I'll tell you why.
You still have that awful death tax.
No, the awful death tax doesn't start until you have more than like 23 or 24 million. Okay, but we may have to bring it back in. But let me tell you why. Revolutions are created because of wealth disparity. That's what happened in Russia. That's what happened in China. That's what happened around the world. Because what happens is the rich get greedy and greedier. And what they do is they push down the poor so much that they start revolutions. And that's the reason
Nick, hold on a second. Nick, hold on.
If you're going to
the
compare
United
it to
States
China,
is not
if
immune.
you want to compare it to
to
China
that
and
type
to
of
Russia,
behavior.
tell me, how is it exactly that the wealthy people in the United States are pushing, grinding under their heels, the poor in the United States? How are they doing that?
Because what they do is because of the tax system of the United States and also the lottery system we have here. Now, you don't understand that because you're in Australia. But over here, if you hit the lottery, you're a Taylor Swift, you're a Joe Burrow, you have some exceptional weirdo gift. You're worth hundreds of millions in income, billions of dollars. Like, who's that guy? The guy that created Tesla, whatever his name is, Elon Musk. Okay, so you hit the lottery, you're with billions. Everybody else eats hot laser dust here. That
didn't answer my question at all. How is it that the people at the top are crushing the people at the bottom? How do they do it?
I don't have a book. Only the wealthy.
Nick and Shaquille.
How
Elon
exactly
Musk.
do the wealthy crush the people at the bottom? Tell me.
Oh, well, the thing is, it's not too hard because part of it, let's go to the estate tax system, which I loved for years. When I started practicing law, now I'm going back 40 years, the estate tax actually started when somebody accumulated assets of 600,000. And then by the time you're over 1.2 million married, it was a 55% federal estate tax. Today, because
don't change the goalpost.
Powerful, rich lobby, they
Don't change
pushed
the
that number
goalpost.
up to 23
Your
million.
complaint
It's
about
just
whether tax
one of
rates
many
should be.
ways. Let's go to another one.
No, hold up
PPP
a second.
loans that Toby brought out.
Nick, hold up a second.
Come
The
on,
question I asked you
I'll
was,
listen anyway.
the question I asked you was, how are the rich crushing the poor? Now, you say that because the rich are crushing the poor, you need to increase tax rates. Now, coming back to answer my question about how they're crushing the poor by justifying why taxes should be higher isn't an answer to my question. How are the poor being crushed by the rich? Rich people aren't getting rich and a deprivation of the poor.
Listen, counselor. That's the reason God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Twice as much listening as you do talking. All right. One way they did it. Let's go look at the student loan debt. Student loan debt, which hits average people, 1.7 trillion. Let's go look at the PPP loans, 800 billion going to wealthy individuals or nice upper middle class people like myself in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it was forgiven. When I talk to people around the country, we expected it to be forgiven. Well, why don't you forgive student loans? They don't expect it to be forgiven. That is one of many, many typical ways that wealthy people just cram it down the poor people's throat. The problem with poor people is they're not financially sophisticated. So they accept it and say, I guess it's okay. Rich people got 800 billion in tax relief and basically free money, and we got nothing. And
rich people are also the ones. Rich people are also the ones that are paying all the taxes. But let's just come back. Are you suggesting then that the homeless people that are walking down the street in any inner city in the United States, the people in California, New York, all these homeless people, that the government should come out to them and say, look, we've got these people out there that are worth hundreds of millions. We're going to take all their money. We're going to divide up. We're going to give it to you. And that way we're going to live in a more equal and just society. That has never worked. In no country has that ever worked.
It worked in the 50s and 60s here in the United States. What are you talking about? It's never worked.
It's never worked.
Worked right here in the United States of America until your friend Ronald Reagan got on board and decided to give tax breaks for wealthy individuals.
I see.
It worked here. We actually had this thing called a middle class.
And the total tax take when you had 90% income taxes, was the total tax take as a percentage of the GDP substantially higher than it is today? It was a little bit higher, but it wasn't by much. And was anybody actually paying the guys in FGM who managed to negotiate a special tax treaty and write it into the code so that they would be exempt from it? All the people that were actually in that income bracket got exemptions. What you had was a bloated bureaucratic tax system. Nobody was paying those rates. Just like today, you could increase the tax rates to 150% on the rich. As you well know, the rich will just change how they earn money. Instead of it being income, it'll be borrowed against assets. That's what
there's absolutely no proof in what you're saying. Okay?
Yeah, there is, because that's what they already do.
Quote, excuse. The sad part in the reality, if you increase marginal rates and you close loopholes, they end up actually paying more. But I don't agree that they should pay more, Shaquille. I think what it should be done is earmarked to reduce our national debt, because you have another problem on the other side of the ledger. Rich people paying taxes will not solve our economic problem, because then the poor people get and they'll spend it like a drunken sailor. Internet for all. Come on, Mark. So some person who's, because I'm an American Indian in Podunk somewhere in New Mexico, I'm entitled to have high-speed internet lines. No, you're not. That money needs to be earmarked to reduce our national debt and get our country back where it's solvent. So the Joe Biden, now that we tax everybody, we're just going to give it away, has got to go too. So you need to have both sides of the ledger. Number one, increase revenue, taxes, closing loophole. Number two, reduce expenses. Get rid of the Biden, I'm going to solve everybody's problem by giving them the money away. So you got two parties that are out.
Since you brought me up and everything, since you brought me up in all along those lines, is there a not legitimate claim to there being a digital divide? Because that's part of what the reason for Internet for All is and everything, and it's part of the need to have information provided. I mean, there's even a conversation around whether there is going to be internet provided in areas that might be minority based, or even to Shaquille's points of other things that are economic, because there are some poor areas.
Mark, who doesn't have access to internet?
They have access. They want high speed internet, Lee. Okay.
No, but they already have access to high speed internet.
I'm in an Indian reservation. I can't afford baloney. You can afford high speed internet lines. You have really rich casinos that Shaquille, who doesn't believe the rich Indians are raping the poor Indians, they do it every day. Not your Indians. We're talking about American, what do they call it? The Native Americans.
Native American.
People on the top, and this is typical. They set up these casinos. I had one of my law firm partners working in this area, so I know a little bit about. They rip off all the money, and guess what? The tribes don't get anything. Do they have the money? The answer is yes. Will the wealthy Native Americans spend it on the poor? No, they hoard it. And so they can afford it.
So whose fault? So whose fault is that when people start talking about giving money to these communities? You don't end up giving it to the communities. You give it to people at the top of those communities, okay? And as we all know, I've had some very high success in greyhounds and horse racing in Australia, and I've won many millions of dollars in prize money doing that. So let me ask you, is it therefore my fault that my greyhounds won the biggest races in the world and everyone else's greyhound didn't? So therefore, I disproportionately took all the prize money on the day of that race. I took over 95% of all the prize money paid at the track that day. Totally wrong.
That's absolutely wrong. This is the winner take all mentality that we have.
Hold on a second. The winner take all mentality. There are some folks that don't have that necessarily that mentality, because, like I said, if you want to look at sports, there are some people that have gotten some high praise for what they've done because they came out of those communities. Now, there are some that came out of those communities and did not reach back, and that's part of the argument that people have. But people praise LeBron James because LeBron James went and built things in Ohio out of neighborhoods that he came from. He gave jobs to some of his childhood friends and a number of others, and he also has gone back and helped those communities that he came from, because he came from a relatively humble beginning, no, actually a very humble beginning, all on the same lines. The same thing can be said of the basketball player Chris Paul, who's turned around and given some of his money, even though he didn't come from an HBCU, to the HBCUs, because he feels that they need some additional aid and support other than what they are getting from the federal government. So is there anything wrong with folks doing that? Because that is what folks are oftentimes asking folks to do that are the wealthy. I mean, we just talked, I think it was last week, about the fact that Taylor Swift gave all these bonuses to her employers, whether it was the person that was selling Cokes at the concert on up to her managers and everything. I'm just using the Coke person as a...
Mark, what could be bad about people giving back to the community? What could be bad about people voluntarily giving back to the community?
I don't think there's anything bad about that, but there are people that
I can't think of anything.
But there are people that give pushback and everything because they are saying that they aren't doing enough of that, and they will use those as examples of people that are doing it, and then they will say that more people in those fields, be they the athletic or the entertainer field, should follow their model and follow their
No,
example.
that's a different story. When you have the fires in Lahaina and Maui, and you're having these people who are, without mentioning names, asking, the little people to donate towards those causes. And these people who are asking are billionaires. Like, why are they asking the little people to give? Why don't they just give themselves?
They do that all the time, Lee. It's disgusting. The one thing great about wealthy people in general, number one, they always overvalue their assets. Number two, they always devalue your abilities. It's just a natural thing. So if you ever spend a lot of time with wealthy people, like Shaquille, he's great and wonderful, and everybody else sucks. Okay, his assets are beautifully positioned, and yours are trash. Your contribution is nothing. Mine is huge. That is the nature of the bloody wealthy beast.
That's right.
So and the other thing is, we have no problem asking.
Let me ask you something.
For money.
Let me ask you something. I've worked very hard. I've worked very hard to get where I've worked very hard to get where I am. But let me ask you this then: you say that I'm the one that says that my assets are great and yours aren't. Well, then, if my assets aren't as great as I think they are, and your assets are much greater than you think they are, then why the hell are you trying to get the tax department to come after me to steal my assets to give them to your broke ass?
It's not
now, while I'm on the subject of philanthropy, tell me, you know who Elon Musk is, you know who Bill Gates is, you know all these people. Tell me, what's the name of that billionaire in the United States that gave it all away? Anyone remember his name? No, because you people don't care about people that do well. And I'll tell you what his name is. His name is Chuck Feeney. And he was worth $8 or $9 billion or something, gave it all away to philanthropy. Anybody celebrating Chuck Feeney? Anybody saying, "Oh, what a great..."
Hold on a second, Shaquille. There are people that regularly celebrate. Hold on a second, Shaquille. There are people that regularly celebrate, and it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, they celebrate the legacy of the Rockefeller family. And it's my understanding that one of the Rockefellers literally used to give money away and would go down the streets giving money to various people and all along those lines. And that is celebrated and everything.
Look at Dolly Parton.
It's never
Dolly Parton has been celebrated all the time.
I need to go celebrate.
Someone goes out to a nice restaurant and spends 10 or 15 grand on dinner, and people
Rockefellers
go, "Well, how could they possibly do that?"
Shaquille O'Neal goes and pays for people's restaurants. LeBron James paid for a high school. People are celebrating these people because they've done the philanthropy.
Yeah, that's
LeBron earlier, definitely.
Mark, didn't the Rockefellers donate the land for the United Nations?
The Rockefellers do what?
Donate the land for the United Nations?
Yeah, I think that I know that, like I said, I remember the Rockefellers, the legacy was that he would walk down both New York and other things. I think they did donate some of the land and all along those lines. And I mean, there's a number of things that go on. Even, as a matter of fact, tomorrow I'll be giving a lecture, and I know y'all get tired of me talking about the local legacy and everything, but I'll be giving a lecture again about the Hayti to some young students. I'm trying to remember where they're from. I think they might be from Duke or one of the, matter of fact, I know they're from Duke now that I think about it and everything. But part of what I'll be talking about is the legacy of Black Wall Street, because part of what Black Wall Street was there were people that were literally learning kind of what you're talking about. They were learning at the feet of the folks that were wealthy. So like I said, Mr. Duke, who is the person of money, is the guy that speaks stained glass and everything. But Mr. Merrick, who was the barber, was literally the barber for this major robber baron and everything, and these business deals that were going on. And
why are we celebrating that, Mark? If it's so awful, if it's such a slight on society that successful people exist, why would you study and try to be like them and try to be more successful? Because apparently only being poor gives you the moral high ground.
There are a few things that we have to untie. And I think that's where we run into this whole problem and going back and forth. We have to untie success from wealth, because you can be successful and still not make a lot of money. Money is one thing. I mean, you can be a successful person being in doing social work. You can be a successful teacher. You can be a successful IT support person. Success and wealth has to be untied. Elite and wealth and rich have to be untied, because we in society tend to tie these things together and think that, oh, well, the elite are these rich people. No, you can be elite. You can be a hard worker and be a social worker and be one of the best social workers out there, helping individuals find homes, working, helping women dealing with domestic abuse. You can be a successful and elite police officer. You can be on the SWAT team and not be rich. So one of these things that we definitely have to untie, which could help the conversation,
Jacoby?
when we're yelling about, well, I work hard and this is my money. Well, so does this individual who's helping women get through this domestic abuse case that they're having to deal with, and they're a social worker working in the community.
So therefore, the government should be able to come up to me and say, look, there's this woman out there who's this great social worker who's chosen to do that role, knowing full well that it doesn't pay very much. You've chosen to go into other things. You've taken enormous amounts of risk in your life. You stay up and all hours of the night and day, but because that person also works hard and is successful in a very poorly remunerated job, we're going to take what you've earned and we're going to give it to them.
Nope, that's not what happened. That's not what happened.
Well, that's not what happened. The tax office doesn't come and take the money and give it out.
We cannot sit here and complain about and do this whole tax a la carte thing and try and label, hey, your taxes are paying for this poor kid to be able to eat food at a school. I don't want my taxes to do that. No, but if you can afford it, because this wealth that you have allows for you to have $500 million. And then if you take a percentage of that $500 million, which turns out to be $100 million, and that doesn't harm you because, yes, you can live off of $400 million.
Jacoby, who gets to decide? Who gets to live by what standard?
Hold on a second. Lead to your point.
Wait, I want to directly respond to that comment. Who the hell are you to say I can live on 400, not 500? This is the same argument I've heard when people say to me, Shaquille, how could you justify spending?
So you cannot live off of $400 million.
Let me ask you my
question. It's not relevant.
Let me ask you my question.
It is very relevant. If you're saying that you can't live off $400 million, but somebody can live off of $20,000, is that what we're saying?
Let me ask you the question. So when people say to me, how can you possibly justify spending $10,000 or $15,000 at a restaurant, buying $1,000 bowls of wine and caviar and etc., and I say, well, it's my money. What's the problem with that? They say, well, you could have gone out to McDonald's and spent $100 with the same amount of people. So I say to them, so what should I do then? Every time I feel like going out to a nice restaurant, I should instead go to McDonald's and then donate the other $14,900. Is that what I should do?
That's not what it's asking.
That's ridiculous. So the comment that you make that if you've got 500
you're making some crazy argument to pigeonhole the argument.
The comment that you've just made that if you've got 500 million, well, you can survive on 400. Yeah, but you can survive on 300 too. You can survive on 200. You can survive on 10. Why not have the government take 490 million off you?
That's not what it's asking. That's not what a progressive rate is asking. Talk about what Nick talked about earlier.
Hold on a second.
Dropped it down to 30 and 20 some odd percent. The actual tax rate years ago was 90%. And we actually had the golden
tax system in the United States that is more progressive than any other country on earth that I'm aware of has. It is way more progressive than anyone else. It is completely lopsided. It is not broad-based, and it is doing a very, very poor job. It does a poor job because the people at the bottom feel as though the people at the top are not contributing enough. It does a poor job because the people at the top feel as though they're being hurt unless they use the loopholes.
Our tax rate is so poor that everybody considers the U.S. to be the shining beacon on the hill where there's an actual cost of living. Our tax rate is so poor that the individuals in, for example, the South Sudan have to live off of such a poor level. The tax rate is so poor and horrible in the U.S. that in China there are individuals that are having to go into these to get copper off of use the soldering irons, and they're getting paid wages of about 25 cents, but the actual companies in China are taking that copper that they saw, or that copper and silver that they take from the motherboards, and actually making a lot of money off of them. But the tax rate is so poor.
What does that have to do with taxes?
All I'm stating is that on a progressive tax rate, where the individuals can actually afford that tax rate, unlike a trickle-down economic system where we keep cutting taxes for the wealthy out there, where that wealth gap grows, which was brought up earlier, that wealth gap is just steadily growing. So at some point, what was the wealth gap when we had kings and queens?
Jatovi.
That's where we're headed.
Jatovi. Now listen, I know that you love to be on the progressive high horse.
I know that you love to be on the high ground.
Before you start labeling me as a right winger and calling me
names, just labeled me as a progressive, so I labeled you as a right wing person. So we're done with that. Can we get past the labels?
So when we talk about tax rates, which is what I talked about, there's a couple of ways that you can use to assess whether a tax rate is working. One of those ways is to compare the total tax take and the efficiency of the tax system in one country versus another. Okay, so in Australia, where we have a progressive rate of tax, and we can compare it to our neighbouring country, New Zealand, and see who gets the highest percentage of GDP, and see whether or not one tax system works better than another. The US's tax system, based on its peer group, is the most inefficient.
How many people in Australia?
Now, all of these comments that you've
just made. How many people in Australia?
What?
How many people are in Australia?
It's not relevant.
It is, because
you know what? Again, I'm not going to waste my time.
You're talking about don't waste your time. I mean, you can get irate and get upset, but if you're going to try and pigeonhole the argument to one little area, just to say, well,
I'm not irate
because it didn't happen to me. They have the data that show that the cutting taxes for the wealthy doesn't help.
I'm not irate. Nor did I suggest that you should cut taxes on the cut taxes on the wealthy. That's not what I said. And in all the previous shows, I have said that you need to broaden the tax base, that there are certain things that you need to do in order to increase the percentage of the GDP that's being taken by the US government. What I'm not prepared to do is to waste any of my time or energy on your imbecilic comments and behavior.
I'm dumb again.
That's why I'm leaving. Goodbye.
Hey, Shaquille, hold on a second. Before you leave, I had a question about Australia that actually has to do with global supply. I think that you would be the expert on this and along those lines.
Mark, to follow up on what you said before, I think it's very dangerous for the government or anyone to tell someone how to spend their money. No one needs a swimming pool. No one needs a guest bedroom. No one needs a 10,000 square foot mansion. But to tell people you can't have that because if you have the funds, I think it's very dangerous.
But here's something that is also very dangerous. I'm going to bring up two examples, Joe Burrow and Taylor Swift. Now, I like Joe Burrow because he's a chess player. Taylor Swift is attractive. But here's the problem. They both won the lottery. They both make more than $250 million a year. Now, what is their contribution to society? They both make $250 million a year. One is a little bit better at throwing a football than the average person. The other one, a little bit better marketing and perhaps singing than the average person. So with that, we're going to take a vast majority of our assets and control of the United States and turn it over to these two people.
Okay? Evidently, people think that's a good idea. That's why they're spending the money the way they spend it.
This is not a good
idea.
But
who are you, Nick, to tell people how to spend their money?
I'm not telling you how to spend their money.
But people want to give money to Taylor Swift to buy tickets. It's their dime.
I understand we have a lot of.
I don't think it's a good use of funds, but that's not my decision.
No. Lee, I think we don't want to do have what we have right now, a nation of lottery winners. In other words, if you win the lottery, good for you. You have total control of the United States. If you don't win the lottery, bad for you. Eat hot laser dust. And that's what we have right now. Lee, I think there's a lot of football players who are starving. There's a lot of musicians who are starving, okay, tons of them, and they're going to eat hot laser dust for the rest of their lives. The two lottery winners get to live in.
And I think, Lee, that's where I was trying to come in.
That's not the United States of America.
I'm sorry, Toby, what?
On equality. But didn't they say something like that in the Constitution? All men are created equal? No, they're not. Let's change it. Some men are created equal, and some are not. and then we're good to go.
That's what I was trying to say. We've got to take away that mentality that rich money, wealth is everything and beyond.
No, in theory, I agree with you because we all have different things that we can accomplish. But the business world, other than measuring who has the most marbles, how do you measure business?
And I think if we focus on it at the same way, if we focus on money as the same way we focus on a product, that it's a byproduct of, or it's this and that and the other thing, then it takes that emotion away. And then we can think about a progressive, the best progressive tax rate to help everybody have that opportunity or that equality.
So why don't we just confiscate everybody who makes more than $1 million a year? No one needs that salary.
That deters people, and that's something that we should.
That deters folks, and Lee, along those same lines. Hold on a second. Lee, along those same lines.
I understand. Some people are 6 feet, some are 3 feet. There's nothing you can do about that. Some can lift weights, some can't. Some at the Olympics, some can run very, very fast.
But Lee, along the same lines to what Toby was saying, one of the things that I consider, and I know y'all get tired sometimes when I bring personal examples in and everything, but I consider my younger brother, he'd probably be shocked to hear me say this because we have sometimes agree on some things and we don't agree on everything, including our fantasy.
Nobody agrees on everything, Mark.
Yeah, no, but I think that he is one of the most successful people in the world to what Toby was talking about, but he's not making a ton of money. He is doing work with what some people.
I get that. To Toby's point, money is not the only barometer of success. I get that.
So it's not making tons of money for him and everything. It's enough to survive on, but he's nowhere in the even six-figure range. He's probably like making close to around 40, 50, or 60, but he is helping a lot of these young people that are in trouble and all in that space.
And I think that's another fine example. It's just we've got to untie this money and this the messages that we put around money so much, and we want to argue that it's taken from me, and well, you're giving it to this poor person who doesn't really. Well, it could be Mark's, the individual Mark just talked about. It could be the individual.
I just want to reduce the national debt.
Yeah, and it works on that, and it's not
just make the government more sound financially.
Yeah, it's not. We cannot think of it as an a la carte approach because we get so pigeonholed on. Well, we're helping this one poor person, and it's taken from me, given to them. Well, it's not really that. It's just a progressive tax rate to give everybody an opportunity, and give everybody.
I don't want to take from A and give to B. I just want to make the U.S. government financially solid. Yeah. Okay. So, in one way,
can you convince the politicians that because they don't give a rat's ass.
I know they don't care, but the thing is, one way to do it. See, Shaquille goes, "Oh well, the poor people don't pay taxes. Poor people don't have any bloody money." Remember, that's the reason they don't pay taxes, and they do pay payroll taxes, but that's a whole other story.
And also sales taxes.
And sales taxes, right,
and gas taxes.
The thing is, the wealthy people benefit.
Consumption.
Hey, come on, Lee. The wealthy people benefit the most from this country. They benefit to keep this country together more than anybody. Then they need to contribute to keep the government sound. And in order to do that, you may have to have a large net worth and income tax. So people like Joe Burrow, as much as I like him, Taylor Swift and Beyonce, when they hit these home runs, they are going to make a contribution to reduce the national debt.
Nick,
Rockefellers and the Jeff Bezos that have large net worths are going to have to contribute a percentage of their net worth to reduce.
I hear what you're saying. During the campaign with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, she accused him of not paying taxes.
He's worth $10 billion. He needs to take $1 billion of, because I don't think he's worth $10 billion. Take $1 billion of his net worth and contribute to reduce the national debt.
Nick, why do you think we have the tax laws we do?
Pardon?
Why do you think we have the tax laws that we do?
Well, the thing, because they're crazy. I mean, you know that.
Well, why do we have them? We have them because the politicians made them to make happy the people who donate to their campaigns.
Right.
Nick and Lee, just really quickly. Hold on a second. Nick and Lee, just really quickly. One of the things I was getting ready to ask people, and it ties into all of what we've been talking about, is there is a very rich individual. We actually mentioned his name earlier and everything, that apparently was using his power in order to control a war that's going on, because he runs the Starlink satellites and all along those lines. So what do we think about Elon Musk literally turning off the power?
It's not restricted to him, Mark.
Actually, it is.
No, he's not the only wealthy person who uses their power to push people around, if you want to use those words.
Yeah, in general,
It
yes.
needs- it
Money
needs
is
to make
power.
a major contribution, not to buy Twitter, but to reduce the national.
Who has the gold makes the rules.
Well,
Okay,
the sad part
we're
is
on
that what Mark is bringing up is just part of it. Because yes, Elon has a lot of control dealing with the war in Ukraine, but also Elon, because the government getting more involved with EVs and the way EVs are taking control. Well, more EVs coming into the market. Elon and Tesla now are going to be they're going to be pushing the standard EV setup, just like a gas station, the standard the technology across the board across the US. So that is going to be a standardized technology coming from Tesla. So now Elon even has more control.
Tesla, by the way, let's add Tesla funded by
Yeah.
our U.S. government national debt. Because
Yeah.
remember, it was the U.S. government who spent billions of dollars, billions to build these stations. Remember, it's the U.S. government
Yep.
who funded SpaceX by buying their stupid rockets. So Elon Musk is basically sucking from the U.S. government his billions and billions of dollars. Good for him. Bad for him. Bad for us. We're hugely in debt, 31 trillion. But Elon needs to make a contribution
Yeah,
to
I
reduce
think that's.
the national debt.
But
I'm not
the
asking
wrong-
for his money, mind
But
you.
the
I'm
wrong
not
part about
asking for his money. I'm not asking him to give you the money, Jacoby,
Yeah.
or Mark or Lee or anybody. I want his money to be earmarked to
Check.
reduce the national debt.
But think about how crazy that is.
What's
We're
crazy
begging.
about
The U.S. government had to cut funding to NASA to actually go in cahoots with SpaceX because we couldn't fund. We argued about funding for NASA, and so
and then
SpaceX
we gave the money to Elon.
exactly.
How smart
So
is that?
we cut,
Who's
and that's
doing that?
that's the wild thing that we're thinking about is that.
Okay.
Is that the more we cut taxes because we're helping out the billionaires and we don't want these millions and billions of, we want to make sure that they're not taking our money, but then we end up having to invest into their companies, and then they have this
Jacoby?
gain based on this
He
one.
needs to give back, baby.
Jacoby, I agree with you. We're investing in our companies, but we don't have to. We're choosing to. And when the government chooses to do something, there's always doing it for benefit for the government or politicians.
No,
There's a reason they're doing it.
The thing is, we have to.
Why? Why can't the marketplace decide?
The NASA program and NASA itself actually created so many products that we currently use today that were in our products today.
And therefore,
but we argued and cut funding for NASA so NASA can no longer fund and send these spaceships and do all this science stuff that we need.
Elon.
So we have to,
And then Elon
we
becomes
continue that investment in that technology that we end up utilizing. We had to invest that money.
Jacoby, you tell me private industry could do something cheaper and better than government? Is that what you're saying?
Possibly not.
I want to hear you say that off your lips.
I don't know about that because again,
Come on. You can say it. You can say it.
depends on what it is. But does that private entity, because they get that contract,
He's having a hard time saying
jack up
yes.
their price?
Yeah.
So we end up
You got
paying
it.
double of what they would
Jacoby's
charge
having a
anybody
tough one
else.
with this
Hey,
one.
Jacoby, along the same lines, and Jacoby,
Hard
along
to
the same
say
lines,
yes.
I know you
Yes.
mentioned it. I've said that I'm a fan of this idea, and you mentioned it in chat. But
Progressive and
could
it's-
private industry pick up even on the internet question? Because I know that there are private entities that are definitely doing efforts to bring internet to folks that can't afford it, and all along those lines. So would that be an area that maybe the private entities could help and everything? Because like I said before, I'm definitely a fan of bringing
They
internet
are.
to rural areas.
They are. So like all the lines that get laid for, like the lines for fiber, the reason that, and Nick, I know your argument was, hey, not everybody needs internet or high-speed internet. Was the technology barrier, and that's business. That's a lot of business that can go on in rural areas that, for that, since it is a global industry. So if somebody in rural Tennessee that lives on top of a mountain, doesn't have many visitors, but has this gift shop then they can sell to somebody and ship it out anywhere they want to. It's a bigger thing than just giving people the internet so they can look at porn. I know.
Hey, buy your own hotspot, baby. If you're going to live in the Rocky Top, Tennessee area and you say you don't have internet, buy your own hotspot. Don't ask me to fund it on a credit card.
But the thing
It's
is,
not my job. It's not government's job to provide you. Hey, since you're going to provide an internet, maybe you should have a Publix next door. Wait a minute. Maybe a CVS should be next door. I live on a reservation. I need to have a Target next door to be in a Walmart. No, it has to be a super Walmart. Come on, Jacoby. You live out.
You really want to live next door to a Walmart?
that's business. That's capitalism. That's what we're all about. Capitalism.
No, but the thing is, it's not government's job to provide every wish on somebody's bloody wish list.
But the
If you
internet
don't-
is
if you
just
don't
like
like
the internet right
hold
now
on a
is the
second.
same thing as the interstate highway system. It's the same thing. It
Say
is
that
a
again?
public it is a public
Trying to say
service
the
that gives
internet
you access to everything.
interstate highway system.
It is the same thing right now.
That's a leap. You know,
Not
but
really.
not
I know it's
everybody has
and
an
everything, but
interstate
there was the
highway
last thing I was getting ready to get to, and I know that
Yeah.
Shaquille's still in the back and everything, so maybe he'll jump on this one, or we can talk about it on Monday. But we talked yesterday about the sanitation worker strike that is going on here, and apparently there's a major strike that's going on in Australia. It's the workers at Chevron's liquefied natural gas facilities, and they've begun to walk off the jobs in a dispute that threatens as much as 7% of the global supplies and could add to the rising pressure on energy prices. So I didn't know if he's got anything to say about that, or anybody else does, but they're saying it's game on Chevron.
Mark, the garbage men, in case you guys don't know it, are on strike in Durham. Okay.
I said that.
All right. Now let me tell you something about that. So my garbage is piling up there. They want $5,000 up front, and they want pay raise. Give them the bloody $5,000. I did some math on. You know how much it can cost us? $2 each. $2. That's it. In other words, if I write a check for $2 and everybody in Durham writes a check for $2, these garbage guys get $5,000. What's wrong with that? What is wrong with that? And if you're not willing to spend $2, you know what? The people in Durham deserve to have the garbage pile up in front of their yards infinitely, rather than give them $2 in the New York Minute.
What you did there, Nick, was perfect. That's the way we should all look at different taxes and the expenses that we spend.
Hey,
Penny on the dollar for particular things.
I'll do it right now. I'll give you my $2. Pick up my bloody garbage. Get your $5,000. I mean,
But the question I was asking is,
Nick, there are private companies that will pick up your garbage.
are we concerned about what's going on in
That's
Australia
hard
with their
work.
strike? Because apparently,
Well,
I'm going to see if
it's not
Skill's got anything
private
to say about it,
company.
because apparently it's bringing up 7%
let me
of
just
the.
weigh in. Let me weigh in, Nicholas. Let me weigh in. Let me make sure that I've understood you. Let me make sure I understood you correctly. You want every single person in Durham to contribute $2 to the garbage men, but when it comes to national taxes in the US, you don't want every single person to contribute. You only just want to pick on one group and get them to contribute. If I summarize that correctly,
never said that. I never
yes,
said
you
that.
have, because you know full well, that the bottom 50% of the United States pays nothing in taxes. The top 10% of the United States
and I don't want to hear
pays
your
90% in
violin song.
taxes.
Oh, I worked so hard. I worked so hard for my money. Come on. All these people work hard for their money, Shaquille. You're not the only one in the world who
Get a
works hard
different
for their
job.
money. I
Get a
hate to
different job.
send you the
If
news.
you don't think
News
that
flash.
a garbage man is going to be,
News
is going to remunerate you well enough, get a different job. Any dickhead
hard
can go out there and
for
pick up rubbish. You don't need some special skill to do that. But if you're not
So
happy with
what?
paying
It's
attention,
still hard
then
work.
go get a different job.
So
hard
work,
work.
and it's necessary.
You know,
Give them $5,000. Shaquille, you're telling me you won't give them $2? What's wrong? What's wrong
well,
with you?
I don't live in Durham, so I'm not going to give them anything. But let me ask you: so are you suggesting that the poorest people,
Listen,
the
if
poorest
you're
people in
garbage
Durham?
men are
No,
picking up
let
in
me
Australia,
ask you a question.
$2
So the
over.
poorest families in Durham, the ones that don't have any jobs, that are perhaps relying on Social Security, they should contribute $2 so somebody with a job can get $5,000. Is that what you're saying?
Listen, I'll contribute
And
more
that
than
seems
$2.
like a fair and reasonable thing to do, doesn't it?
Dude, I make a lot
Mr.
more than you.
Progressive
I'll
Tax Rate?
contribute more than $2. I tip like crazy. Maybe not as good as you, but maybe sometimes I do. because these people don't make that type of money.
So
Yes.
get
You know?
a different
And they
job.
do work hard.
Then who's
A
going to pick
different
up the
job.
trash?
You don't want to.
No,
You don't want to
clean
do
the
the
room.
trash.
Real.
And you want to
Doesn't
Yeah,
work
the
that
job
way.
is not everybody wants a different
want
job. Some
5
people are
grand. What's
happy with the
5
job that they
grand?
have. I just
Doesn't
mentioned my
work that way.
brother
But
that
if they're happy with
does
the job
social
that
work.
they've got, stop complaining about it.
It
You
doesn't
don't-
work.
you don't be an
No,
extortionist
that's
and say,
just
well, we're
dumb.
not going to provide
That's
you
a
with the
bad
services
argument.
that you need. And also, we've got a monopoly, right? So you can't sack us all. So we have a monopoly. And now that we have a monopoly, now
monopoly
we're
on the
going
money.
to demand that you pay us more, or we're going to shut it. We're going to shut everything down. Yes,
That's what the rich
Shaquille, they
do.
want $5,000. In our country, $5,000 isn't very much. I hate to tell
good.
you.
So sack them then.
Now, in Australia,
Sack
it's
him and
probably
give the
a fortune.
$5,000 to somebody else. Do
For-
you
for
reckon?
you,
that-
5,000
do you reckon-
maybe
I don't know. How many people?
Yeah.
How many people work in the
No,
garbage?
race to the bottom. Okay.
How many people work in garbage collection over there? 1,000? I don't know. 10,000? What is that? Right? Whatever the number is.
They
Do
want
you reckon if you
$5,000.
sacked all of them and then put an ad out in the paper and said, "Look, we've got a job for you,
It doesn't
the
work
same
that
pay
way.
conditions, and we're going to give you $1,000 to sign on." You reckon
It
you might be
doesn't
able to
work
do it?
that way.
Did we just
How
see
do you know? Just tell me
It
the
doesn't
truth.
work
Didn't
that way.
we see that with the migrant
Yeah,
workers?
it's so
Do you know how many
interesting.
people will not do
It's
the
so
work that
interesting.
the
Yeah.
migrants are wanting to do, whether it's
It's so
farming,
interesting
whether it's
to hear
construction,
all
or a
of
number of
the-
other things? There have
all
been
of
folks
the
that have
hatred.
literally
These people, man, they're
had
good.
these
It's
jobs
so
and
interesting
that
to
have
hear
been
all of the
offered these
hatred
jobs and have
towards
said,
the
I
people
don't want
that are
this job
successful.
because it is too hard. So there are jobs that are very much out there that folks will literally turn down that are good paying jobs, and folks will be like, that is too hard to work. That is what is the conversation around a lot of the migrants, because a lot of
Fine.
migrants
So if
are
they
doing
don't
work
want to
that
do, so if
is
they don't want to do the
difficult
job,
work.
if they don't want to do the job, then you might have to pay more to attract somebody to do the job. But people can't just sit there. People can't just sit there and demand, and then say we're going to shut down the whole thing, and nobody else can pick up your rubbish because
So
we're going to
now-
say nobody else can pick it
So
up.
now, here's the logic.
So
Here's the logic. This is funny. This is
It's so
funny.
interesting to hear
Here's the
how there's
logic.
all
Joe
this
Burrow should get
hatred and
250 million
vitriol
for bloody
for the
garbage,
people
man.
that are successful.
So,
the people
Your
that are
Honor,
successful
Nick,
are
Your Honor,
the
Your
people that are
Honorable
successful
Nick.
are leeching off society. The people that
Honorable
are successful aren't
Nick,
contributing enough in taxes.
Your
No
Honorable
talk
Nick,
about how
Judge
the government wastes money. No talk about how people at the bottom waste their
Judge-
resources or don't put the effort in. No
Judge Nick-
responsibility taken by them. It's
Here's-
all the rich person's fault.
Judge
And
Nick,
we
I
always
would
wish
like for
Joe
you to
Burrow should make
understand what the
250
other
million
councilman is
and not pay
saying.
any taxes. Poor garbage man wants $5,000. You don't want to give it to him.
No,
What's
I don't want to give it to him. No, I don't want to give it to him.
What's wrong with you?
I'll tell you what you should do.
Joe Burrow
This is
is
what you
entitled
do.
to 250
Let
million
private
for
enterprise-
football. For the guy
Let private enterprise get involved in garbage collection. Let the free market take care of it and disband the unions. And
Listen
then
to
you'll
the
be fine.
logic. Listen to this logic. Listen to this logic. Nick, you're saying to pay him 5,000 more, and that's I agree with. Then Shaq came in. Well, if they aren't going to take what they have, just fire them, and then we'll pay new people an extra $1,000. But if
Not
nobody-
necessarily, Toby. Why are you saying new people?
Let me
Why
finish this
new
out.
people more?
Let me finish this out, Lee. Hold on. This is what Shaq said. He said, fire them and then hire new people with $1,000 signing bonus. And if the new people won't get hired with $1,000 signing bonus, hire a new company and pay that new company more. We're back to paying people $5,000.
Yeah, and you know what?
Nick, what's the base salary?
It's a real
How could
shame.
you justify
How much is how much is people making?
How can you
$1,000.
justify
He
on the
doesn't
one
think
hand?
that's right, but Joe Burrow,
Nick,
who throws
let me ask you the question.
who dances,
Let me ask you the question. How can you justify on the one hand giving every single person who works in garbage collection $5,000? And I've looked up Durham.
so hard?
How can you justify taxing everybody the $2 to give every garbage man $5,000 at the same time as you haven't increased funding for children with disabilities? You haven't increased funding for social services for people that are over 65. You haven't increased any funding for your libraries recently. Your school system
Almost.
didn't get the promised increase in funding. So those families don't get it, but they're expected to give the garbage people
So the
$5,000.
old argument
So
of pitting
if you're
people
going
against
to
each
justify,
other.
Government does a great job of it, Toby.
Well, that's
Why
what
don't
Shaq is doing right now.
Why don't
This
you
is his whole
give it to
argument.
every police
You're
officer,
pitting two
every
parties
ambulance
against each
officer,
other and saying
every
you don't
fireman,
deserve it because
every
they can't
street
get it.
sweeper, every librarian? Why doesn't everybody just get across the board
That's
pay
right.
rise?
Pit
That's what
people
you're actually
against each
after.
other,
There's not
but
enough money
allow
to do it.
people, but allow the rich to get richer. That's the
it's
simplest
okay for
argument
Joe
that you're
Burrow to
making.
steal
That's
his
your whole
$250
messaging.
million.
Hey, just
They
really
work
quickly
so
because we're
hard
getting
for
to
it.
wind down and everything, but I was going to bring up something that was interesting, and I know that Shaquille may find this interesting because he does some work around the African nations and all along those lines. But apparently, there is a coffee project that is going on that is dealing with reforestation and everything because they're trying to put Mozambique on the map as a coffee producing nation because apparently there are a number of other countries, including some in Latin America, that have been more into the coffee basin all along those lines. So apparently, there is a major project that is going on that is going to try to get that particular country involved in everything. So I was just wondering if that is something that might be something of interest to folks that are in the investment lane, because I do know that Shaquille does some things in the investment lane. So will you be looking at this project? Because I know you've done some investments even here in the United States around different projects as well, because we talked about that both on and offline. But is that something that would be of interest to you, a country that is looking at some of their resources and trying to figure out whether they want to go into a new field? Because apparently they're looking at going into the coffee making field.
That's Mozambique, right?
No,
that's a
no,
foreign
it's no
country.
interest
Put
to
a
me
big
because
tariff on
I'm
it.
not involved in
If they
food.
make it in America, that's fine. But if it's not made in America, slap a big tariff on them. You know, I mean, the United States needs to get real, baby. America needs to have American first policy. We don't give a rat's rear about China.
So you're a Donald Trump. So you're Donald Trump supporting MAGA Republican now, are you, Nick?
You know,
Sounds like it.
If you make products over in your country, which I don't know what you make, and it comes to my country, we're going to have to slap a big tariff on everything that comes in.
Well, like the United States, Australia doesn't make anything anymore. We just buy everything from China. But
we do too, and that's a big mistake.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this about your tax.
And slap
As
a
I've
tariff on
pointed out
Mozambique
before,
coffee.
as I've pointed out before, and nobody has ever been able to give me a sensible answer on this. If you guys increase taxes on the very wealthy in the United States, what about the people who invest in the United States that are not American, who don't have to pay taxes in the United States in the first place?
Send them back.
You
We
can't
don't need
send them
them.
back. They're
We
not
don't
there in
need
the
their
first
money.
place.
We don't want them.
They're not
We
there in
don't
the
want
first
their
place.
money.
If I buy
Perfect,
$500 million
baby.
worth of properties in the US, and in 10 years' time I sell them, and I sell them for $1.5 billion, so I make a $1 billion profit. Guess how much tax I'm liable to pay to the US government? Zero.
Well, that's what you.
that seems reasonable, doesn't it?
The Foreign
So
Investment
that
Real Property
actually-
Tax Act of 1980. We don't allow foreigners to get away with that garbage.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
1980.
You don't have to
So
be a
there's
US citizen to buy US proproperty.
There is actually something going
Chinese
on.
are doing it now, Shaquille.
Exactly.
Around
But
Actually-
forget about
Sure, but
adversaries. People that are coming from tax treaty countries, most especially, not only do they not have to pay US
So-
taxes, but they get tax breaks. Why? To encourage investment from other countries into your country. So you're happy to encourage that investment, but the people that live in the United States who are above whatever random threshold of wealth you guys have plucked out of your asses, right? Those people, you don't want to encourage their investment. What you want to do is you want to punish them,
That's incorrect.
and steal their wealth.
No, that's incorrect. Again, you're pitting parties against each other, and you're also manipulating the words to make it sound, oh, well, we're so free to everybody else, but we treat our own people so bad.
That's exactly
No,
what you
that's
do in America.
not what's
That's
going
exactly
on.
what you do in America.
That's not what's going on.
I can cite
That's not what's going on.
example after example after
but
example
Shaquille,
of where
I
tax
have to
breaks
admit,
have worked
you're
in a way
right.
that
The
foreign investors
international
have been
people
able
get away
to
with
make a
tax
profit in the
murder.
US, while US-based companies can't.
Now,
I bring that up all the time in the Chamber of
you're
Commerce.
correct.
In
You come
fact,
from
some of the
overseas,
time that I've brought this up, I've
get away
actually
with murder.
advised US-based companies to set up foreign subsidiaries in order to
Right.
have the foreign subsidiary conduct the business in the US, because
Yeah.
the foreign subsidiary will get a tax break that they won't get.
You're telling people to use a tax loophole.
we have to stop that. Foreign
It's not a tax loophole.
Why would he not, Toby?
It's not a loophole. That's what the tax
Isn't that
It's in for a reason.
It's literally called a loophole.
Close
No,
those
you
areas.
call it a loophole.
And what's wrong with that?
You call it a loophole. We are abiding.
You're
We are
suggesting
abiding
people
exactly by the
evade
letter of the
taxes.
law as it was
No,
written.
no, legally, Toby.
No, that's a loophole.
Loopholes
You're
are legal. Wake up.
Yes, he's suggesting people utilize a loophole to
Why
evade.
would you not?
He's
Not
right.
evade. You are not evading
Owner's
tax. You are
allowed to
legally
do
reducing
that.
your taxes to Toby.
Any account worth
Evade
their
tax
if somebody says to me-
evasion
if somebody
utilizing
says to
a
me-
legal loophole.
yes. Any account worth their
That is what
worth a dime would do that.
So if
If your
I'm
account's not doing
driving,
that, you fire them.
if I'm driving,
Shaq, no, you're not listening to what I'm saying because
I
you're
heard
jumping
you,
into.
Toby. I heard
So,
you.
Shaq,
If somebody-
you're
if somebody's
suggesting
driving through
people
Oregon.
evade taxes
Legally.
utilizing a legal loophole.
Okay.
100%.
Firstly,
The point is
there is
not
a
evading.
very big difference.
Why would you pay more than you need to legally?
Lee,
You're a fool.
there's a very big difference between reducing and evading. Evading is illegal. I'm not
You just
advising
said
anybody.
to
I'm not advising
avoid.
anybody to evade taxes.
The word avoid was used.
Avoid
correct.
is a different word to evade. Now, by your
So by
analogy,
avoiding taxes, are you evading
no,
paying
you're not.
taxes?
There's a big legal
No.
difference between those two words.
It's
too. But
unfortunately.
by your reasoning, somebody who is driving through Oregon who wants to go and buy a new T-shirt should say, "Oh, actually, I shouldn't buy the T-shirt in Oregon where there's no sales tax. I should wait until I get to California where there is a sales tax and voluntarily buy the shirt there." Or somebody who lives on the border between California and Oregon shouldn't go shopping in Oregon where there's no sales tax because that's avoiding tax. Of course, that's ridiculous. Of course, people are going to reduce the amount of money that's going to be stolen from them by an overreaching, overarching government.
Stolen. It's your contribution for a society that
Requesting people.
operates.
It's not a contribution
in
when
your
you've got a gun
favor,
held to your
favor.
head.
See,
You
who
got a gun held to your head
stole money
and
was
you-
Elon
and
Musk.
it's being taken from you.
Let's talk about who the real robber
Toby, if you don't
baron
pay your taxes, the FBI will come running through your door, the IRS will come running in. If you say, "No, I'm not paying it," they will
Well,
physically
talking
use
about
force
all
in order to
avoid taxes
appropriate
altogether.
your property and sell it to defray.
I'm going to take your
the
advice. I'm going
amount
to
that
now
you owe.
avoid taxes because obviously there's no gun held to the people's heads who avoid taxes.
That's right, because they are doing. They've
They
read the rules.
avoid
They've read the
taxes.
rules and they've said, "Right, I'm not going to pay this. I'm out of here." And I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think that anybody with any sense of self-respect would do everything that they could to reduce the amount of money that's going to be stolen from them and then pissed up against the wall
stolen from
by
them.
incompetent
Stolen, yeah, stolen
So,
from
No,
them.
it's not
just really
stolen.
quickly, because I
These are
brought it
the-
up
this
earlier,
goes
and
back
I
to what I
get
said
your answer
originally.
to it and
They
everything. What is your
overvalue their
thoughts? Hold on a second.
Exactly.
Because we are what we're going
Undervalue
over, but I
everybody's
definitely
else.
want to hear Shaquille
Exactly.
talk
You
about
Let's talk.
whole
Let's
strike
talk.
and everything.
Let's talk
Make
about
sure
overvaluing
society
the
works.
contribution. Let's
Shaquille,
talk about that. Let's talk about that. So, you guys all gave me a lecture. I won't say all of you guys, but the people that were on the economic show a few weeks ago, or back when I was in Dubai, gave me this big lecture about how the rich people should give it all away because the children of rich are unhappy and blah blah blah. So they should give it away and it should be taken from them because the government knows what to do better with it, right? Or they should be able to give it to charities and things like that. Nick, get back over here. Get Nick back up here, Mark. So let me ask you this question: when the Sierra Club pays its executives $3 and $4 and $5 million pay packets, that's perfectly okay. But the rich person shouldn't allow his child to have $3 or $4 or $5 million from a trust fund because that's not okay. Is that the understanding, right? Because those people are going to spend the money better on their private jets than what the person who earns it would be able to spend on his private
You're
jet.
finally starting to get it, Shaquille.
Yeah, I'm losing
the
brain
thing
cells
is,
listening to progressive thoughts.
It's important that you make a contribution to society, and it's important that your kids make a contribution to society. This whole thing of
No. There's a difference between a contribution and all of it. All of it. My contribution is not everything I've ever worked for.
Have to be stopped. This
I don't know who's
international
talking about
freeloaders
everything
have
you
to
work
stop.
for,
They're
taking
not
everything
stealing
away.
it. What you're
To
doing
tell me,
is
if somebody didn't try to reduce their taxes and they
society.
live in your country, they're going to be up depending on what state.
Mark, I gotta go. I'll see you guys on Monday.
Is
See you guys.
the tax
Toby.
percentage
Go away,
100%?
Lee.
Be well.
Is the tax percentage
Capital gains
100%?
tax, then they're up for an
Is
inheritance
the tax
tax.
percentage
Wow.
100%?
It can be if you don't. It can
No,
be
no,
if
no,
you
no,
don't-
no,
if
no,
you
no,
don't
no, no.
structure
This
it
yes, you can be. No, answer the question. Is the tax percentage 100%?
It can be if you're not.
No,
structured
no. Shaq. Is the tax percentage 100%?
It
No.
can
What is the
be
tax rate?
if you're not structured properly.
Is the tax rate
I
100%?
just said yes. It can be if you're not.
It is
structured
not. You
properly.
are lying. That is
No, I'm not.
patently false.
If you get
It
a
is
dividend from a
patently
country,
false.
but you have
What
to
is the
structure
tax
yourself
rate
properly to
currently,
get
Chad?
mitigation credits,
Chad,
you end up
what is
with
the tax
double
rate?
mitigation credits,
Texas versus
which in
Florida.
some cases can
What is the
exceed
tax
the amount
rate?
of the dividend that you receive.
Chat. What is the tax rate?
Take care, Mark.
It
See you guys
can
on
go
Monday.
it used to be able to go
It
over
depends on what
100%.
income you're in, Jacoby. But when
It
you
is
talk
not
about income
100%.
taxes, are you talking about income taxes? Income taxes are not the only taxes that you pay.
So
I
with
just
the
listed a
money
whole
that
heap.
people make,
Sales tax,
so Jeff
property
Bezos
tax,
is paying
local
100%
taxes,
in taxes.
state income tax, state
No.
sales tax,
Is,
federal
is
income
Jeff
tax.
Bezos paying 100% in taxes?
No,
Jacoby,
he's not. But
nobody made that suggestion.
there-
You
Nobody
just
made
said
that.
you said take
No,
it
I
all.
didn't. No, I didn't. Listen to what I actually said. That's not what. That wasn't what I said to you. That's not what I said to you at all.
What did you say? Did you say?
I
Did
said
you
that
use
if
the
you're
word
not
take
structured
it all?
properly, if you're not structured properly, it can be as high as 100%, sometimes more. That was firstly. And secondly, I said to you, if you're talking about income taxes, obviously income taxes are
Did
not that
you
high.
say take it all? I'm just trying to get a basis. Did you say take it
Yes.
all?
Yeah, because
Yeah,
that's what
that's everything.
the proposals. That's what the proposals that you guys are making. We'll
No.
fix the tax. We'll fix the debt, the national
Nobody
debt,
made that
by
proposal at
taxing
all.
people at 90% above 10
Who has
million.
made that proposal?
Nick makes it all the time. AOC talks about 70, 80, 90% taxes all the time. That's
What
your
was
side
the
of
what was
politics.
the
my
tax
friend.
rate
That's
when we
your
had
side
the
of that's
golden
your side
era?
of politics. You progressives that
No,
sit there
what
and
was
say
the tax rate when we had the golden era?
That's your side of politics. It ain't mine.
What was the tax rate when we had the golden era?
Nobody paid it, Jatovi.
Nobody paid the tax rate when we had the golden era?
This is why.
or 1960.
This is why this argument
Yeah,
shows
what was it?
very clearly.
And
Very
that tax
clearly.
rate was sitting at what, 90% and all the other stuff, and then it's come down,
This
and
is-
then
this
Reagan
is-
dropped it down to what,
Not
20?
94% under the.
Jatovi, this is
Yeah,
exactly the
Reagan
reason
dropped
why.
it down to what, 90? What was it, 21%, something like that?
You put it down.
Put
That was
it
a
down to
high
70.
marginal rate. But what you
Eisenhower
And
dropped
then
it
he
off
had to
to
jack it back up because we weren't taking in enough money.
Jatovi, this is the problem. This goes to the heart of the problem because people who don't bother to study taxes and economics at all look
Am
at
I
it
wrong
and think,
when
look at it
Reagan
and
dropped
think,
it and then put it back up?
Can I finish?
I mean, you said that this is
Can I
the
look?
problem.
Can I
I'm
add?
just asking the question. Am I wrong that Reagan dropped the tax rate low and then had to raise it back up?
He did.
Can I finish?
raised
my-
it under
Can I finish
TEFRA,
my
RIA,
comments?
and DEFRA.
This is the problem with this way of thinking.
No,
1980.
no, I'm just
believe-
asking a question, Shaq.
Okay, I'm
You
not-
just said
okay,
I was
I'm gonna-
right.
look,
Can you
Enough.
admit that I was?
I'm not going to try and explain to you why this isn't going to work if you're not prepared to listen. So either tell me that you're prepared to listen to the reasoning that I have for why that doesn't work, or just continue doing the same old thing. I don't really care. It's up to you.
I mean, you're saying that I'm wrong, but then I'm hearing that I'm right. But go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. The
Finish-
problem with this
finish-
way of
finish.
the problem with this way of thinking is that you simply think that by increasing the marginal rate of taxes, that's going to increase the tax take. It doesn't. It didn't then, and it doesn't now. The problem is that people who are wealthy actually earn money in different ways. And I know that you're not going to like listening to that from me because I'm some big right winger in your mind, as you called me earlier. But, you know, our guest, David K. Johnson, who's an economist, the Pulitzer Prize winning writer for the New York Times, he says that we need to broaden the tax base. Robert Wright, who is a left-wing economist who was the
I'm still waiting
Secretary
on your
under Bill Clinton.
explanation
He
instead of
says that we
some
need to broaden the
diatribe
tax
about
base.
how bad
President
I am.
Obama,
I mean,
he says that we need to broaden the tax base. Every major economist in the world says that the best way of dealing with taxes is to broaden the tax base. It is
Everybody
only
agrees
the
with that.
progressives. It is only the progressives who can't be bothered to actually sit down and say what we actually need to do to increase the amount of money that the government gets is to have a broader based tax system and to tax differently. Okay.
everybody agrees with broadening the base. I mean, we're talking about the tax rates as well.
Progressive
So it's
taxes
more than just
don't
one
work.
thing.
Progressive taxes don't work for two major reasons. One, because the people at the top can change what they're earning so that they don't have to pay them. And
Just like you
two,
pointed out.
because if people do pay them, you are punishing one group of rich people whilst another group of rich people don't have to pay anything. It is an unfair way of doing things. If you want rich people to contribute, you need to make sure that people at the same level of wealth are contributing same or similar amounts to the government.
And that's what they're trying to do.
Progressive taxes don't achieve that goal.
Incorrect. That's what they're trying to
Well, you
do.
say incorrect. You say that. Just go and have a look at the OECD nations. Have a look at how they tax, and then you tell me what works the best. Because if I'm incorrect, then what the whole world should do is have the US
You-
tax policy, right?
Again,
If I'm incorrect,
you're
then so too is
incorrect in your
Sweden, Denmark, the
statement
UK, Australia, New Zealand, all of Europe, Canada, everyone else is wrong then, and only the tax system that's been proposed by the progressive left of America works,
Incorrect.
according to you.
No,
Well,
I'm
show me where I'm wrong.
stating
Show me where I'm wrong.
that your views about what the progressive left, and I'm not even talking about the progressive left. Everybody already agrees that broadening the base needs to happen. It's the
No, you don't
GOP
agree
or
with
the
it, though, because
Republican
you don't want
Party who
people
actually
to vote
removed the
today.
estate tax.
You don't
So
want people to
again,
vote
we're
today,
talking
do
about
you?
broadening the base, but no, what the Republican Party is doing is shrinking the base. So again, talking about broadening the base is what everybody has already agreed on.
Okay, and how are you going to
even
broaden the base? How are you
Huh?
going to broaden the base? Are you prepared then for your taxes to go up and Mark's taxes to go up? $10
If
a
my
year.
taxes,
Are
just
you happy,
as
are you
what
happy for
Nick
your taxes to go up by $10?
Just as what Nick pointed out earlier, if my taxes go up to give the $5,000 to the sanitation workers in Durham so they are happy in collecting the trash, of course I'm fine with
Okay,
that.
you happy
I'm
with
fine with
$100? $100 a year? $100 a year? $100
Now
a
you're just
week?
doing
Tax
arbitrary
increase?
numbers.
Well, you want to throw arbitrary numbers at the rich people. You want to
No,
broaden the
that's not
you
what's
want to broaden
happening.
the tax rate.
That's not what's
You want to
happening.
broaden the tax
You're
rate.
just tossing out arbitrary numbers
No,
and then saying
You want
that's
to
what's
talk
happening
about-
to the rich. That's not what's actually
You
happening.
want to talk about broadening
And
the
we
tax
just talked
base?
about broadening the base, and now you're arguing against it.
You want to talk about closing the loopholes? Well, don't get your maximum deduction. Okay, don't get all the deductions that you're allowed to claim in the United States. When you start doing that, you can start lecturing the rest of us about why we should be contributing.
Again, you're talking about shrinking the base, but
How is that
arguing
shrinking
that,
the base?
we should broaden the base.
How is that shrinking the base? By requiring more people to contribute more shrinks the base. Brilliant logic. Brilliant.
But Jacoby, you are correct that the Republican Party does not want to increase the base. What happened was they actually passed a law that repealed the federal estate tax under EGTRIC, in 2001. Guys like Shaquille think it's okay because remember, rich people shouldn't have to pay taxes. Joe Burrow, Taylor Swift, because they work so hard singing and throwing a football. But your sanitation worker, God forbid, that he gets $5,000. God
I didn't say
forbid he got
I didn't say rich people
$5,000.
shouldn't pay tax. When did I say that?
But
You just
Taylor
applauded
Swift
it.
When did I say that rich people shouldn't pay
You
tax?
just
entitled
applauded
to
it.
$250 million.
I applauded. I
Joe
applauded
Burrow's
the increase of
entitled
the threshold
to
for
$250 million.
for
Your
the estate tax.
sanitation
It didn't go
worker-
far enough. Donald Trump brought it up to 25 million. It should be eradicated altogether. It's a terrible tax. Awful
It's
tax.
not a terrible tax.
It's
What
an
do you know
awful tax.
about
It's a disgusting. It's a
Shaquille,
disgusting.
you're talking to a
awful
trust
tax to
baby.
tax somebody.
What do you know about
they
the federal
die.
estate
They
tax?
can't
Hello?
hand down their money to their offspring.
No. You know, you're talking to a trust baby who's inherited a lot of money. Okay.
Yeah,
Let
I
me-
know.
Let me tell you something. I didn't do jack for it, and I didn't pay taxes on it. And you're telling me that's okay?
I'm
Where
saying
these
that,
guys work
no,
their butts off,
Let me
and
tell
they
you.
have to pay a huge amount of tax.
Talk about broadening
Let me
that
tell you,
base.
Nick, what I'll
There's
say
no
is
trust
it's
baby
okay.
in the country that doesn't know
It's
they
not
got a
okay.
windfall from the
It's
federal
not
government.
okay that
Thank you,
your parents.
Republican Party.
It's
Thank
not okay
you.
that your parents or your grandparents or whoever it was that set these trusts up
My
had to set up the
great-grandparents.
trust in order to avoid the taxes. They should have been able to just bequeath you the money, and the government can keep its
nothing.
snooty
I pay
nose
nothing.
out of it.
Shaquille,
Talk about
I
broadening the
pay-
base.
here's what I pay for my inheritance. $0. You know what I
Good.
did? I was part of the Lucky Sperm Club, baby. And that entitles me to live better than
Absolutely.
anybody else. So take
Absolutely.
it on the chin, baby. And
Absolutely.
you support that system. I don't. I think it was stupid. I think
You know what? You know what? You're probably
Shaquille, hold on a second. Shaquille, hold on a second.
I'll go out on a limb, Nick.
I got a
I'll
quick
go
question
out on
for
a
you.
limb, Nick,
Hold on a
and say
second.
that
Before we
if
wind
you
up,
feel that way, you're probably 3 or 4 generations away from the people that actually made the money, because those entrepreneurial people would never, ever have supported this kind of nonsense. So it's only the 3 or 4 generations mark where they start
right.
sitting there and self-loathing and I haven't
Shaquille,
contributed enough.
Look
We're the poor garbage collector.
I
He
got a
needs to
quick
get
question for you.
There's only people that
Shaquille, quick
Trying
question
to
for you
help out
before
the
we wind up
community.
everything. What is your thoughts about because I've mentioned them before on the show. I don't hide the fact and everything. What is your thoughts about money that is trust funds that are actually created and everything? I've said before, and I don't hide the fact that my mom ran a major foundation that was trust money and everything. It was the money that came from the tobacco settlement and all along those lines. She ran it for several years. So are you okay with that kind of money being created? Because that was a trust fund as well. It wasn't a family trust like what Nick's got, but it's something that mom ran for a number of years. It was a tobacco.
The money wasn't created. The money was paid out as a settlement, according to what you just said. It was paid out as a settlement from the tobacco companies, right?
And then so, they built a foundation out of it.
Yes, and there's a foundation there so that money can be used for on an ongoing basis to help. Right. I don't know what the purpose of this is, but presumably to help whatever group of people or groups of people that the foundation or the trust was set up to help.
Get people out of the tobacco, mostly get people out of the tobacco industry because tobacco is supposed to be like this evil product and everything. So
I think that's absurd. The world needs to back off on this no smoking thing. In Australia, I just bought a pack of cigarettes today, $65 for a packet of cigarettes. Ridiculous because Australia's taxing it so bloody much. I know that there's a health risk that I'm taking when I'm smoking. It's my choice to smoke. Leave me alone. Stop taxing the bejesus out of me.
But does your health risk of smoking affect other people?
I don't care.
It does, of course, because he puts a burden on the health system of Australia.
I am paid.
So he's saying, again, this is how rich people think. All for me, none for thee.
I am paid for it.
It's my choice to become unhealthy. It's my choice to have to go to hospital, but you have to pay for it. And that's too bad.
I'm
I
paying.
Don't want to pay
No, Nick. I pay.
You are paying. That's the reason they have the tax.
First of all, I have international private health.
But what about the individual that you give cancer to because of having your secondhand smoke?
Health insurance.
But your contribution to the health
I pay through the taxes that I have contributed in the past. I've paid for it.
Are you paying for that individual who gets cancer because of your secondhand smoke? Are you paying for that one too?
Absolutely, because the tax is already on the cigarette packets, right?
But what about that child who no longer has a mother or a father? Are you paying for that child too?
But also, Jacoby, I don't sit there and smoke around other people that don't want to smoke, and it's absolutely fair enough for them to leave. I'll tell you what sort of ridiculousness we have because of you bloody bleeding heart, goody two shoes, and know everything, and want to tell everyone else how to live. We have a rule in Australia. We have a rule in Australia that says when you go to a smoking area, no food allowed. Now, I can understand why you shouldn't be able to smoke in an eating area, but why aren't you allowed to eat in a smoking area? If I choose to eat in a smoking area, shouldn't I be allowed to do that? Oh, no, the government says, no, you can't do that.
Is that at a restaurant?
That's really ridiculous. Pubs, clubs, restaurants, and all that. You can't eat in a smoking area. Now, why is that?
Are you having to be served at that time, or are you carrying your food there?
You can't take your food out there and eat it.
So you as an individual can't take it out? Or what about the restaurant that has the server in the smoking area?
Both. They can't grab a plate of food and go out to the smoking area and have a bowl of wedges and a beer and a cigarette at the same time. Can't do it. Why? If I choose to eat my wedges outside around a bunch of smokers or non-smokers want to come out and eat the wedges with me, that's their choice. We don't need government to come in and say, you better not do that because we know better because otherwise you're going to impose a cost on everybody else.
For this discussion. Now, to help understand the other side, because you may not want to understand the other side.
No, not really.
So with the other side's viewpoint, is it quite possible that they're trying to make it where one in restaurants, pubs, clubs, wherever that restaurant worker doesn't have to walk through that, or that the individual who's smoking doesn't make it unsanitary going to get their own food?
That is not the argument that was made. The argument was they didn't want people smoking in places where people were eating. So in order to enforce that rule, they said you can't smoke in eating areas. And then people started saying, well, that's fine. I'm going to grab my wedges. I'm going to grab a beer. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to have a drink my beer. I'm going to have the wedges. I'm going to have a smoke. It's going to be great. And the government said, hang on a minute. That's no bloody good. You can't let people do that. So we're going to stop them from doing that. If
you have a smoking area in a restaurant and
you don't have, this is Australia where government knows best. So there is no such thing.
If you cannot have a smoking area in a restaurant,
yeah,
right, So how would you make a smoking area outside for a restaurant?
Pubs and clubs and things like that, right, will have outdoor smoking gardens. Restaurants will often have designated smoking areas that are attached to the building, but there is no food being served in those areas. Okay. I'm really more referring to pubs and clubs than restaurants specifically, as in standalone restaurants.
So
now, when I was in North Carolina, the North Carolinians that I was with took me to a diner because I really wanted to go to an American diner in the South. So they took me to a diner, and I noticed somebody smoking. And I was like, can you smoke in here? They're like, yeah, sure. I ended up smoking 3 cigarettes there just because of the novelty of I could actually smoke inside this diner. Okay. Now, you may agree or not agree or whatever, that's fine. But the idea that the government's going to say to me, you cannot take a bowl of wedges outside into the beer garden where you can have a cigarette is absurd. The government should just stay away and let me make whatever decision I want to make.
Just really quickly, because I know we're getting ready to wind down. We've gone really over and everything, but really quickly, and I think Nick can attest to this, but he just left and everything. I want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jatovi, because you've been there just like I've been. I want to say that Shaquille, I know he's been talking about it for a while, come to North Carolina, that there is smoking areas at the Washington Duke, which is actually one of the places that Nick loves to take people to and everything. So I want to say that there are smoking areas that are designated there, but I could be wrong.
Is it outside? I don't know. I can't remember the smoking area at Washington Duke.
You know, I smoke less when I'm in America. Because I can smoke, I smoke less. I smoke more here in Australia because the government doesn't want me to. I don't like being told what to do. I didn't like being told what to do when I was a kid. I didn't like being told to do what I was, by my teachers, by parents, by anybody. And I certainly don't like being told what to do by the government. And you little goody two-shoe school prefects that think government knows best all the time, I think need a healthy dose of self-respect.
I don't know. You went down some tirade. The government here, isn't saying, they're saying don't smoke in particular areas. So would that mean that you would go and smoke in those particular areas?
I am referring to across the board. You people that want bigger government, the government to have more money, the government to jump in and regulate this and regulate that. We'll have rules for this. We'll have rules for that. You've got so many laws you can't even count them all. Right? You don't even know what all the laws and regulations are. You people who want more of that on the Western side of politics need to have a healthy dose of self-respect.
The irony in that argument is that people like myself want women to be able to choose their own rights. That's a difference. People like myself want the LGBTQIA community to be treated equally and have their own and not be
really. I
Different.
see. So when you say
people
you want
like
women,
myself,
when you say you want to have women,
equity to lead to equality, so it's not really laws against. So when we talk about big government and how we want government this and government that or whatever, that's just that is. To each his own on that idea, because with me wanting someone the opportunity to choose for themselves in a medical decision, that's freedom to me. That's not it, but others wanting in
order to achieve
not
that
allowing
freedom.
books in particular schools, that's not freedom.
In order to achieve that freedom, right? So a woman's right to choose, it's just a healthcare decision. It's like getting an ingrown toenail removed. It's not a serious big thing, right? In order to give women that right, you want to make it, this is what your government's trying to do, is to make it so that doctors that have a religious or other moral objection to performing that type of procedure aren't allowed to say no. They're required to do it. It means that psychologists and psychiatrists that have children come to them who are questioning their gender can't say, look, it's just a phase that you might grow out of. They are forced to say, absolutely, you're a boy, you're a girl, you're a cat, you're a giraffe. Absolutely no problems at all. In fact, here's what we'll do. We're going to put you, when you're not old enough to smoke, drink, or have sex, we're going to give you some puberty-blocking medication that's going to cause permanent sterility and infertility. We're going to cut your boobs out when you're 15 years old.
There,
and then when you're 18, we're going to give you bottom surgery.
You stated there
Beautiful.
from
and you're going to do that by force
ignorant,
because you're into equality and equity.
Everything you just stated there came from the internet. The way that you're so, for example,
you don't
with
think that I
women's
know
rights,
people in medicine. You don't think that I know people in health departments. You don't think that I see
women's
what
rights, with women's rights, you tried to make the decision, the medical decision, or you're saying that women go in for this medical procedure the same way they look at a ingrown toenail.
That's not what I said. I said that's the way that you make it out.
No,
and
it's
you
not.
just make it out very flippantly. It's just a medical. The woman just is trying to make a choice about her own body, like she's getting breast implants or an ingrown toenail removed.
Choosing her medical procedure does that in all seriousness, but it has nothing to do with me. I think that woman making that medical decision is smart enough to make that without somebody telling her with her and her doctor, without somebody telling her that, well, you have to do it based on this religious text that I believe that you can't do this anymore.
Well,
so
firstly,
I believe women are smart enough to make that medical decision on their own.
I'm not an advocate for making abortion legal. I'm just going to say that outright. But let me just ask you this. So let's say that a woman, I'll give you a hypothetical, right? Let's say that a woman is pregnant and now she's unconscious, okay? But she's with a boyfriend, but they haven't been together long enough to be considered to be in a relationship or a marriage-like relationship. Her parents want to abort the child. The father of the baby doesn't want to abort the child, and the girl is unconscious. Who do you think ethically should be able to make the decision? Not legally, because legally it'd probably be the parents, but ethically. Who do you think should be able to make the decision?
You answered the question. It's not my choice to do that.
No, but it's somebody's choice. Whose choice do you think it should be?
You just answered the question.
Yeah, so you don't want to answer it, do you? You don't want to answer the question. It's a tough one.
You literally answered the question.
You do your same usual stuff when you get asked a hard question.
No, chat. You literally answered the question.
You won't just say that.
You literally said, legally, it's probably the parents. Then, okay, I can't make that decision. It's not up to me.
I'm not asking you about legal. I'm saying morally.
It is legal.
Jatovi, you are currently discussing your problem with what the laws currently are or what the laws that are proposed are. So I'm asking you, what do you think the law should be about who gets to make the decision in that particular circumstance?
In that particular circumstance, the hypothetical that I'm not sure has happened ever, it could have happened.
Oh, you don't think there's ever been pregnant women who are in comas? That's never occurred.
It may have happened. I don't know. And we can probably find the statistics of how many times it's happened. So again, that's something that I can. That's something that we can look up. It's probably happened. But in that situation, again, I should not be involved in voting for who should make that decision.
So who should?
That's between that family.
Yes, but if two people in that family are disagreeing and the girl can't express what she wants to do,
that's between that family.
And who should if the family can't decide, they go to court, who should make the decision ultimately? You should just say, Jatovi, you should just be honest and just say, you know what, in that circumstance, I actually don't know. I don't know. I have no idea how to
again, I should not be in that decision. I should not be making family decisions for somebody else's family.
You want the government to do it, Jatovi. You want the government to do it. If the government makes it legal and the government has to take a stance on who gets to make the decision in the absence of the female being able to make it.
It's not. Here's the thing then. I'll turn it back on you since you're constantly asking this question. You believe that you should have the right to make that decision for that family.
Well, if I'm the one that knocked the girl up, yes. But if
you're not, you just asked me. Do you believe in that same scenario The woman is unconscious. The boyfriend wants to have it. The parents don't want to have it. You believe that you have the right to make the decision for that family.
Why would I have the right to make the decision? But that's not.
But you're wanting me to make the right.
That's
you're
not the
wanting me
way
to
that
make
I
that
posed
decision.
the question to you. That's not the way I posed the question. I didn't ask you to jump in and tell me who's right and who's wrong. I didn't ask
Yeah,
you
you
that.
did.
But I said who should be the one who makes the decision. You shouldn't make it. I shouldn't make it. Mark shouldn't make it. Who should make the
Wait a second.
decision?
You agree with me that I shouldn't make the decision. So regardless
but
of what I
who
say, then it's
should?
just academic.
Who should, Jatovi? Who should? You don't want to answer the question because you don't know. And you should just say, I don't know.
Answer.
I don't know.
Then you tell me
what
who
happens?
should.
You say it should be
Who
left to the family.
should?
What happens if one side of the family
Chat.
does want to have it, the other side doesn't? What
Chat.
happens? Who wins?
Who should?
I don't know either.
Then
Jatovi.
why are you asking me?
Because you're the one that's got such a strong opinion on it.
Ever.
You're the one that's got such a strong opinion on the issue. You're the one that wants to sit there and say, "Oh, it's so
I
right,
said that it's not my decision.
blah, blah, blah."
You literally just said you don't know and you don't think it's your decision. Why the heck are you trying to make me answer something that you can't?
Oh, well, Jatovi, that's ridiculous. Somebody saying, well, Jatovi, I don't know the answer to a question about the
You know, now you're
Xbox.
trying
I
to
ask
go
you the
somewhere
question.
else.
You go, well, why do you want to ask
You
me a question? I don't know
literally-
the answer to?
I told
the
you
one.
it's not up to me to decide.
the
You
one
then
who's-
turn to me and say, well, it's not up to me to decide either.
Jatovi, you are the
Then
one who
we
is passing this
agree.
off. You are the one who is passing this off as a healthcare decision. It's just simply
Yes, it's a healthcare decision between
Okay.
a woman and her doctor.
Woman and her doctor.
hold on a
Okay.
second. On that note,
if she was going in, wait. If she had some other type of procedure and it went to court, the court would have to make a determination based on what the doctors say is in the best healthcare interests of the mother, of the girl. But in this case, she's pregnant. Now, she may well have expressed to her boyfriend that even if it's a high-risk pregnancy, she would rather carry the baby to term and risk her life to do it.
Now
Or
we're back
but
to-
her parents might not
Again.
think that. So in
It's
that
fact.
circumstance, the
I
simple
can't
matter is,
make that decision.
these
It's not
issues-
up to me.
These issues
You
get
can't make
really
that decision. It's not
complicated.
up
What
to
you
you.
want to do, is you
What
want
I'm
to try
doing.
and force doctors to make decisions based on, well,
I'm
you know,
just saying it's not my
just a medical
decision.
procedure.
It's not my decision. Is it your decision? You stated no. So whose decision is it? It has to lean back to the legal, I guess. You have to agree. It has to lean back to the legal, I guess. What are we arguing?
I just want to nail you down on a point. I want to nail you down on a point. I want you
everything
to
with
agree.
what I'm stating.
I want you
That
to
it is-
agree that these situations are not so simple as you try to break them down and keep them so simple. Oh, look,
You
what we're going to
can't wanna
do, taxes
make
aren't complicated. All we've got to do is increase the tax rate. Racism
You
exists,
gave
and therefore what we've got to do in the
simplistic
interest of equality
and say
is
that
to-
this is not
is to-
simple.
is to hold back white people so we can increase black people. That'll solve the problem. It hasn't worked
You
before, but we'll solve the
literally-
problem. You know,
You literally
this
agreed
thing
with
doesn't
me.
work, so what
You
we'll do is have a
literally
tax on it. The climate change.
Complain that,
What we
oh,
need
you're
to do
trying to
is
make it
just put taxes
simplistic,
on
but
things
you
and
gave
turn
the
to electric
simplistic
vehicles.
argument.
These are the ridiculous.
Hey, hold on a second. On that note, we'll have more of
Oh,
these
gosh.
conversations on next week. Not long as this one and everything, but we're going to wrap everything up on this note and all along those lines. We do have two shows that are going to be around this issue on 9/11. So we'll have our regular World Edition, and we'll be rolling out World Politics on on Monday
I am
as
just going to
well.
make a comment. I am just going to make a comment to the audience that would be expecting me to be here on Monday. My heart and soul, I think, is scarred by 9/11 as all of us are, and I certainly, I certainly wish the United States the best, and remembering the lives that were lost and it affected everybody in the world. I unfortunately can't be here. I don't think, because I think I'll be on a plane, which is something I don't like generally doing, is flying on September 11, but I will probably be on a plane, or if not, I'll be traveling into the country if I'm trying to try and fly this Sunday instead of flying on Monday. So if I'm not here, I do hope that the show is as memorable as previous shows have been.
Appreciate it. Definitely looking forward to that. Both the premiere of World Politics as well as the regular World Edition. And maybe we'll see Shaquille at our regular 10 o'clock on Monday, as well as the new show that'll be on weekdays as well, Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock. At least that'll be how it'll start off. We'll see if it goes the full time or not along those lines. But that'll be coming out. And I actually just got an email from our sports guys. So we'll be starting that sports show, I think that'll be actually before World Edition, and they're actually recording this weekend, so that should be rolling out this week as well. And then I think later on in the month we've got a women business show that is called Wealth Sense, I think is what the show is called, but it's actually Eileen Castanello that is doing that show along with some others. So there's some new shows rolling out here on Pod TV as well, but 2 of those will roll out on Monday, that being the sports show and world politics. And on that note, we're going to get on out of here.